This is going to be a wild adventure. Over the next month, I'll be through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. The AAWT is one of Australia's longest hiking trails, traversing 3 states through some very remote high country. It's going to be a beautiful, challenging, rugged adventure, and I can't wait to take you guys along for the ride. This is day 1.
It's a pretty special feeling taking those first footsteps onto trail, knowing you'll be living out in the wild for the next month or so. I've really missed trail life, and I'm super excited for this next adventure on the AAWT, a trail I've wanted to walk for a very long time. I'm starting this trek with my mates Tom and Maddie, who have even more through hiking experience than I do. I've also reunited with Dan, who I met and walked with on the Pacific Crest Trail earlier this year. I'll be creating daily videos here on Instagram throughout the hike, which definitely adds another layer of difficulty, but I love inspiring you guys to get out into nature as well. Day 1 was hot, hilly and beautiful. We'll be climbing up into the high country over the next couple of days, which should be a good challenge and a lot of fun. We had a big cook up at camp for dinner and then headed to bed. See you tomorrow.
This is day 2 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. It's going to be another hot, mountainous day today as we are climbing up into the Australian high country. We're planning to summit ACT's tallest mountain, Mount Bimbri, and then cross the border into New South Wales a bit later on today. Very excited.
We started the day walking through Aurora Valley, which has a super high density population of kangaroo. It was the perfect way to start day 2 on AAWT, but we know it's going to be a tough day of climbing ahead. We spent the morning slowly ascending up towards Mount Bimberi, stopping for a scenic breakfast, and Dan and I even found a creek to swim in. The final climb up to Murray's Gap was some of the steepest trails so far, and it was there that we dropped some of our pack weight and headed off onto our next side mission up Mount Bimberi. The track was pretty rough on the way up, and it took us over an hour to make the summit. The views from the top were well worth the climb, and it was pretty cool to tick off another state high point. Soon after descending the mountain, we crossed the border into New South Wales and entered Kosciuszko National Park. It was pretty casual walking for the rest of the day, and we eventually arrived at this beautiful historic hut where we'd set up camp for the night.
35 kilometers or about 22 miles for day 2. We've made it to Oldfields Hut. Plenty of space for camping here as well. And just behind me is Mount Bimbri, which is the mountain we summited just a little bit earlier.
Maddie cooked us up a delicious dinner and we headed to bed ready for a big day tomorrow. See you then.
This is day 3 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We're expecting quite a bit of rain today, and we're planning on hiking between 40 and 50 kilometers, so should be an interesting one.
We're planning to take quite a lot of side trips off the main route on the AAWT, and today would be one of the bigger ones. We'll be hiking an extra 15 kilometers this morning to an area called Blue Waterholes, where there's lots of cool spots to explore. After a few river crossings and some fun trail, we made it to Coolaman Falls, which was pretty spectacular. I probably could have spent all day here. It was a really beautiful spot. We had a good swim and a few jumps before heading back out onto trail just as the rain really kicked in. It's never a fun time walking in the rain, but luckily there were a few caves we wanted to explore which would keep us out of the weather. Some of these caves were over 300 meters deep, and we spent ages exploring them. We spent the afternoon walking across some beautiful country, stopping at the occasional hut to get out of the rain and have some good food. We ended up covering about a marathon for the day and set up camp near this almost 100-year-old hut. My feet had been wet for almost 8 hours at this point, so it was nice to sit by the fire to dry off and enjoy dinner with the crew. See you tomorrow.
This is day 4 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We are only a few days in, and this trail is already blowing my mind. We've got about 30 kilometers to walk today till we reach one of the very few roads that cross over this trail, and we'll hopefully hitch into town for a resupply. Should be a good day.
The clouds were ominous this morning, threatening rain, as we started the day off trail across some beautiful country. Luckily for us, the rain mostly stayed away, but that didn't mean we were going to stay dry. Despite the fact that we're entering Australian summer, which is typically pretty hot, there's plenty of water up here in the high country, which means lots of river crossings. We made great pace all day today, only really stopping for breakfast and lunch. After a solid 7 hours of hiking, we reached the Snowy Mountains Highway, where we would attempt to hitch into the town of Adaminaby. It took about 30 minutes to get a ride, which left us plenty of time to get into town, resupply, grab a motel room and enjoy a big dinner. It's not often you get access to a town or even see a paved road on the AAWT, so we'll make the most of it while we can. We'll be back to trail tomorrow morning. See you then.
This is day 5 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We spent a lovely night in the small town of Adaminaby, and we've just hitched back to trail where we left off. Got about 5 days in the backcountry before our next resupply at Threadbow. We'll be summiting Australia's tallest peak in this section, Mount Kosciuszko, and we're expecting quite a lot of rain. The next couple of days on trail are forecasted to be pretty wet, which definitely makes hiking a little less enjoyable. The weather and the trail don't always go exactly how you want them to, but in my opinion, overcoming those challenges is half the fun of through hiking. Luckily for us, there's quite a few historic huts dotted along the AAWT, which are great to take shelter in. The rain stayed away for a lot of the afternoon today, and we were able to take a side trip up Tabletop Mountain, which was really cool. I'm pretty excited to take as many side trips off the main route as possible during this trek, and I'm expecting to walk almost 200 extra kilometers by the end of the trip. We decided to head off track across country to find a more remote hut to camp out for the night. But unfortunately, I broke one of my poles in the process.
You alright there, Cameron?
I think I can glue it back together.
Glue what back together? Oh, look at this.
Damn it.
We made it to camp and set up just as some heavy rain rolled in. I think tomorrow will be a little miserable. See you then.
Day 6 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. As you can see, the weather's not great this morning. And it's supposed to continue raining hard all day today, so got about 30 kilometers to walk. Just got to get it done.
Hiking in heavy rain and wind isn't exactly what I'd call fun, but it is character building and it makes hiking on good weather days even more enjoyable.
We're about 15 kilometers into the day. Just found a hut, and I think that's going to be the theme of today because of how much rain is coming down, is just to jump between huts to have food and breaks, because when you're walking you just can't really stop. It is so wet.
Backcountry huts were definitely a nice refuge from the weather, but we couldn't stay in them forever. We had plenty of miles to cover today. Luckily, there wasn't much off-track walking today, and our path was relatively flat by AAWT standards.
How you doing, Daniel?
Loving life, my friend.
Despite the wet, we made pretty good pace all day, and after about 9 hours on trail, we found a spot to set up camp.
Just got to camp. It is still absolutely bucketing down, but got the tent set up at least.
Hopefully the weather improves tomorrow. See you then.
I can't believe we've already been out here for a week. This is day 7 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. And after an absolutely terrible day of weather yesterday, we're hoping it'll clear up a little bit for us today.
Better weather did not look likely as we started the day with a side trip up one of Australia's tallest peaks, Mount Jagungal. It was a wet, windy and cold ascent, but we did make it to the top.
We just summited Mount Jagungal, one of Australia's very few peaks over 2,000 meters, and as you can see, the weather is not ideal, so we're probably not going to spend much time up here.
We spent the next few hours hopping between huts and crossing rivers before arriving at the aptly named Valentine's Hut, where our next big side mission would depart from. Valentine's Falls is the tallest waterfall in the entirety of Kosciuszko National Park. There's no trail to the base of the falls, so it was a couple hours of bush bashing through some pretty thick scrub to make it there.
We made it to Valentine's Falls! That was crazy!
We explored multiple levels of the waterfall and had a swim or two as well to make the most of this epic side trip.
Made it to camp after over 40 kilometers today. It was a big one on trail. There are a lot of people at this campsite, so I found a little spot for my tent out of the way, which is nice, into my warm sleeping clothes. Gonna go have dinner now.
Tomorrow we head onto the main range and up Australia's tallest peak. See you then.
We are currently heading up to the highest point in Australia. This is day 8 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track, and I have a feeling it's going to be the best day yet.
I'd been looking forward to heading up onto the Kosciuszko main range since the beginning of the trip, and today was going to be jam-packed full of adventure. It would be a day full of side missions, the first of which was up Mount Tate, one of Australia's tallest peaks with epic views of the main range. Next up was Mount Twynham, the third tallest peak in the country, which still had some snow left over from winter. Next we took a really cool side trail to summit the Sentinel and followed that up with a descent down to Blue Lake for an icy swim. At this point in the day we had spent more time off the AAWT than on it, but it was finally time for the main event.
We have made it to the highest point in Australia, Mount Kosciuszko.
We had been walking for about 12 hours at this point in the day, but decided to head off for one more side mission before camp. We summited the Ram's Head, Australia's 4th tallest peak, just as the sun was setting. We arrived at camp after dark, exhausted and satisfied after an epic day on trail. See you tomorrow.
It is absolutely miserable outside of my tent. Rain, wind, it's been a pretty rough night, but I've got to leave my tent. This is day 9 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We're heading into the small town of Thredbo today, so only a couple of hours of walking and and I should be able to get dry again.
It's always pretty hard leaving your tent in this kind of weather, but we knew town was only a couple hours away, so we got up and moving. I wouldn't say I have a lot of fun hiking in these conditions, but there is a certain satisfaction in pushing through when things get tough, especially when there's a hot coffee and food waiting at the other end. Thredbo is probably one of the busiest towns in Australia during ski season, but it's summer now, so it's pretty quiet, which works well for us. We did all the normal town day chores this afternoon, including resupplying, eating lots of food, and resting as much as possible. It ended up raining pretty much the entire day today, so not a bad idea to spend it in town. We'll be back on trail tomorrow. See you then.
This is day 10 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track, and we just had the most incredible hitchhiking experience. A lovely traveller named Donna only had one seat left in her car, so she drove back and forth 4 times to get us all back to the trailhead. Kindness is alive. I'm very excited for trail today. The weather looks good and we are edging very close to our 3rd state on the AAWT, Victoria.
This morning's hiking was absolutely beautiful, with some great trail underfoot and pristine alpine bushland surrounding us. We also passed by some cozy backcountry huts and really tried to make the most of the good weather.
It's crazy how fast the conditions can change up here in the high country. It was only a couple of days ago that we were walking through torrential rain, high winds. It was super cold, and now scorching hot, super dry. And I have to fill up my water bottle every time I find a stream just to stay hydrated. We've got a couple of warmer days ahead, which is nice because I gotta say I definitely prefer being dry and hot than cold and wet.
It was a pretty relaxed rest of the day, which is always nice coming off a night in town. We covered about 36 kilometers for the day and enjoyed a big family dinner after setting up camp. Tomorrow we have some gnarly off-track adventures planned, which should be very interesting. See you then.
I am currently standing on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. This is day 11 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track.
Victoria, our 3rd state on the AAWT, is notorious for being the hardest section of the trail, with lots of steep ascents and sections of track that are overgrown and hard to navigate. We decided to make it even harder for ourselves after crossing the border with a big off-track side mission to attempt to summit 2 big mountains, Cobras 1 and Cobras 2.
I didn't fall, I'm just taking a break, mate.
You've been swallowed by the mountain.
Oh, just leave me here. Tell my story.
We have spent the last 4 hours bush bashing up to Cobras 2, which was our first objective. Cobras 1 is over there. There's no trail between us and it. So we've decided to bail out, head back to the AAWT because I think we'll be here all day and there's probably not enough light left in the day. All right, let's go.
It took us a couple of hours, but we eventually found our way back to the main route on the AAWT and luckily found a stream nearby where we could wash off after a pretty tough day. We ended up finding a really nice place to camp and enjoy dinner and good chats around the campfire. Tomorrow looks like it's going to be another pretty tough day and I cannot wait. See you then.
Good morning on day 12 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We are well and truly into the Victorian section of this trail, which is notoriously the hardest section. Navigating becomes a lot more difficult with lots of overgrown trail and there are plenty of big mountains to go up and over.
After a yummy breakfast this morning, one of those big mountains would be our first challenge for the day. It was also forecasted to be super hot today, which means we need to carry more water and we'll have heavier packs on the way up. We made sure to cool off whenever we got the chance, as there'll be little to no water higher up on the mountain.
We're currently bashing our way up a 700 meter climb, overgrown, literally vertical, and it's so hot. This is the Australian Alps walking track that I was expecting, the tougher side of the trail. It's fun, but it's brutal.
We made it to the top with only a few scrapes and bruises, and as we descended the other side, an unexpected thunderstorm rolled in.
It's crazy how fast the weather can change out here. Unfortunately, I left my rain jacket at a hut or somewhere a couple of days ago, so I'm stuck using Tom's poncho, but it is very nice to cool off a little bit after a very hot morning and most of the afternoon.
We pushed on into the late afternoon and eventually found somewhere to camp.
We have just set up camp after 14 hours on trail today. It was a tough one, but a lot of fun and very beautiful as well. See you tomorrow. Welcome back to the beautiful, wet Aussie bush. This is day 13 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track.
We started our morning surrounded by kangaroo, getting wet from both above and below. Before long, we began our first big climb of the day, which has become the new normal. There's a lot of big climbs to come on the AAWT.
There's like a 20 plus kilometer section of trail with no water, but there's a rain tank at the top of one of these hills, so we do have water, which is very nice.
After a delicious pancake breakfast at the summit, blue skies appeared and we began our descent down the other side of the mountain. We had a fun little river crossing at the bottom of the valley and ended up on some remote farm roads for the last couple hours of the day. A convenient bridge crossing took us over the largest river on the AAWT, and we eventually found camp after almost 14 hours on trail today. I need some sleep. See you tomorrow.
After 5 tough days in the backcountry, we are finally hitting a road and a town for resupply today. This is day 14 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track.
Town days are always exciting, especially after a 5-day slog out bush. We had one big climb and one big descent, plus a couple of leeches at a water crossing before reaching our first sealed road in 5 days.
We made it to a road. 5 days in the wild.
The excitement of reaching a road was short-lived as we only saw 2 cars in the first 3 hours of waiting. Finally, a lovely couple stopped and asked if we were okay, but could only fit 2 of us in the back of their car. Dan and I enjoyed burgers and coffee in town while poor Tom and Maddie waited a further 3 hours to finally make it in.
So we have made it to the small town of Omeo. Took the group about 6 hours today to hitchhike here. Turns out it wasn't a very easy place to get to, but we're going to spend the night in town, hopefully hitch out a bit easier to trail tomorrow morning, and we'll be back to hiking. See you then. This is day 15 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We have just hitched back to trail after a lovely night off, and I'm very excited for the next few days on trail. We have some big side missions up some big mountains, which should be a lot of fun.
We started today like we start most days on the AAWT with a big climb. The top though at Mount Wills was pretty cool with some great views and a cool hut to have breakfast at. There was some overgrown trail on the descent and we saw quite a few snakes, which is always a little bit sketchy. We had one big final climb into the Bogong High Plains to finish the day, where most of Victoria's highest mountains reside.
We have been climbing all day, almost 2,000 meters of vertical gain, and we are officially up in some of the highest country in Victoria. Tomorrow morning we are summiting the highest peak in Victoria, Mount Bogong, and we're only about half an hour away from our camping hut for the night, which honestly couldn't come soon enough. It's been a beautiful day, but an exhausting day as well.
We headed to bed pretty soon after setting up camp. We're getting up really early tomorrow to try and make the summit of Bogong for sunrise. See you then.
We've been through hiking the Australian Alps walking track for 16 days, and this is the first morning so far we've gotten up in the dark to try and catch the sunrise on trail. We made it to the summit of Mount Bogong, Victoria's highest mountain, and it's safe to say it was both very cold and very beautiful. I've heard a lot about the beauty of the Victorian high country, and this morning was an incredible introduction. We've got some epic side trips planned over the next couple of days to really make the most of the region. We've been seeing snakes more frequently over the last couple of days, and today was no different. It's always important to watch your step when walking in the Australian bush, or things could go south really quickly. After climbing up into the high country, the walking's been pretty relaxed. This is a high trafficked area and the trail's looked after pretty well. So we have been walking on the Bogong High Plains for most of the day today, and I got to say the trail up here is pristine. Not only are the views epic, but the trail underfoot is just lovely to walk on. And we are not too far away from our camping hut tonight, which I'm excited about. Today has been a very good day. Oh, there's a bit of mud. Today was one of my favorite days so far on the AAWT, and we made it into camp after 45 kilometers walked. I'm super excited for tomorrow's side mission. I'll see you then. Good morning from the spectacular Victorian high country. This is day 17 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. It was another special morning on the Bogong High Plains, and today we're heading off on a huge side mission with the intent to summit the iconic Mount Feathertop. As part of our side mission, we had to do a big descent off the plains and stop by this really remote hut for breakfast. As we've come to expect, after a big descent comes a big climb, and this was one of the steepest so far. We persisted though, because we knew we were climbing up to the Razorback Ridge and Mount Feathertop, both of which we heard were absolutely incredible. We decided we wanted to summit Mount Feathertop for sunset, so we had plenty of time to set up camp on this really cool ridge and cook dinner before the final climb. The final push to the top was pretty relaxed, especially without all of our pack weight. The summit of Mount Feathertop definitely lived up to the hype, and being up there for sunset was my favourite experience on trail so far. Tomorrow we walk the rest of the Razorback Ridge into our next resupply town of Mount Hotham. See you then. Good morning on day 18 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. Yesterday's sunset was incredible at Mount Feathertop. We've got an incredible sunrise this morning walking the Razorback into the small town of Hotham, which I am very excited for. Watching the sunrise on trail has been a rarity for us so far in the AAWT, but this morning we made the effort to get up while it was still dark and enjoyed some incredible views along the Razorback Ridge. It's mornings like this where everything is so peaceful and beautiful and natural that make pushing through some of the tougher days on trail so worth it. Don't get me wrong, I do love a good challenge while out hiking, but I also love mornings like this. They're frictionless and relaxed, and you can really take in all the landscapes you're surrounded with. We just summited Mount Hotham, the actual mountain, and now we will descend into Mount Hotham, the town. Oh, let's get a coffee. Hotham is a ski resort town that's usually pretty busy during the winter, but during the hotter months like now, there's not a whole lot going on. Luckily, there was a solitary lodge and restaurant open though, where we were able to resupply, get some food, and find a place to sleep for the night. We'll have an 8-day stretch between Hotham and the end of the trail without seeing a sealed road or town, so we made sure to make the most of our afternoon here. We have had a very productive afternoon in the town of Hotham, editing, eating, resting. The sun is just setting behind me. We're heading back to trail early tomorrow morning. See you then. We have just left our final track town on the Australian Alps walking track, and we have an 8-day stint in the backcountry to reach the southern terminus and the end of this trail. We've been greeted by the steepest hill of all time to start day 19, so I better get to it. The next few days of walking is considered by most to be the toughest section on the AAWT. We won't be seeing civilization, not as much as a sealed road, in the next 8 days, but we have stored a food cache about halfway through this section. I'm excited for the challenge, and I know there's some major highlights to look forward to over the next week as well. There weren't many convenient natural water sources on trail today, so we had to rely on these water tanks placed out here for thirsty hikers. We spent most of the afternoon walking some pretty relaxed trail without much of a view, and covered about 35 kilometers with over 2,000 meters of elevation gain for the day. So we have just made camp right next to this dirt road. We couldn't really find anywhere else to camp in this area, and we've been walking for a solid 10 or 11 hours in the heat today, so decided to set up shop. It honestly wasn't a very exciting day today, and some days are just like that while through hiking. Tomorrow though should be pretty spectacular. We're heading up some huge peaks that should give us some pretty epic views, so I'll see you then. This is day 20 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We started the day at sunrise inside some clouds on some beautiful forest trail. Eventually we climbed up a bit higher and were able to see the cloud inversion from above. Pretty epic. We made sure to enjoy the relatively relaxed trail this morning because we knew it was going to get pretty tough this afternoon. In fact, we're entering the hardest section on the entire AAWT today. Most of the trail on this through hike isn't particularly well graded, and switchbacks don't seem to exist here either, so every climb is extremely steep. We just finished our first major climb for the day up the Viking, which was really cool. Now we've got a big steep descent, and then we're going up another mountain, and we're going to repeat that all day today. Because of how steep the trail gets out here, it can get pretty technical and fun in parts, like this little rope and rock scramble that we had to do. Despite how difficult it was, I really enjoyed the trail today, especially when you get views like this at the top of every climb. We even met this friendly fella on a remote full drive track who gave us some chocolate, which was a massive boost towards the end of the day. We have made it to camp just near Mount Speculation. That was a tough day, 30 kilometers with over 2,500 meters of elevation gain, which is a lot. There was no flat ground today, that's for sure, but we'll set up camp, eat dinner, and we've got another big one tomorrow. See you then. Good morning on day 21 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. That's 3 weeks living out here on trail. We've gotten up a little early this morning to summit Mount Speculation for sunrise. We're almost at the top now, so I'll see you up there.
Sacrificing sleep and getting up in the dark definitely sucks, but it's almost always worth it to be able to watch sunrise on trail. We have a long way to hike today, so we got moving after the sun rose. The terrain continues to be incredibly beautiful and also brutally slow to walk. There's a heat wave currently ramping up in the area that we're hiking, and because we're often walking along ridgelines and mountaintops, it's very exposed and the heat definitely packs a punch.
Sometimes the toughest days are the most beautiful days. That was the story of yesterday. That has been the story of today. It has been incredible, although today has been very hot. Apparently tomorrow's even hotter, so that should be fun.
We all wear long sleeve hoodies in this type of weather for maximum sun protection. Maddie and Tom even brought along umbrellas for some portable shade. We continued to make slow but steady progress throughout the afternoon and were rewarded with some beautiful views around almost every corner. It was a long day, but we eventually found somewhere to camp.
We were on trail for 16 hours today, got up about 5 a.m. and it's now after 9 p.m. Only covered about 35 kilometers, which should tell you everything you need to know about the difficulty of this section of track. But it was absolutely beautiful, and I've got another big one tomorrow, so time to get some sleep. This is day 22 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. There is not much water out here, so Tom and I have just detoured like 2 kilometers off trail. We found a little stream, and now we've got some big mountains to climb. Let's do it.
With temperatures reaching up to 35 degrees Celsius today amidst a pretty untimely heat wave, we made sure to stock up on as much water as possible wherever we could. Water is the most valuable commodity out here, especially on hot days like today, and we're constantly thinking about where we'll fill up next and how much water we'll have to carry.
It is currently the hottest part of the day. During the hottest part of this heat wave, we're climbing the biggest hill of the day. We're also carrying the most water that we'll have to for a long while. It's tough out here in the bush, but I love the challenge, and we're almost at the top now.
While today was really beautiful, it's hard to enjoy it as much when the conditions are so tough. It's been 4 days since we've seen a building or even a sealed road, and it will be another 4 days at least before we see any signs of civilization at the end of the AAWT. We did store a cache out here though on a remote dirt road, which we're hoping to reach today to stock up on food.
Today has ended up being another one of those 14 or 15 hour trail days, but we are almost at our food drop, our resupply out in the middle of nowhere. The sun is almost down now, so it's nice and cool. I'm exhausted, but I'm feeling good.
We managed to reach our food resupply just before dark and set up camp nearby. We're officially on the home stretch now, and hopefully the worst of the heat wave is over. See you tomorrow.
Yesterday we were hiking through a heat wave, the highest temperatures that we've been walking through on this trek so far. This morning we wake up and it's cold and rainy. I'm not going to pretend to understand how it works, but I am here for it. This is day 23 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track.
If you had to hike in super hot weather or super wet weather, which would you choose? For me, I'd definitely choose the heat. I feel like my body handles higher temperatures pretty well, and there's nothing worse than being perpetually soaked to the bone on trail. We got a bit of both today, and the walking for the most part was pretty relaxed, which honestly was much appreciated after a tough few days on trail.
Today has been a day of 2 halves. This morning was wet, beautiful single track. This afternoon's been hot dirt roads, which isn't too bad. We're moving quickly, covering some good kilometers. It's actually only 3 days after today until we finish the Australian Alps walking track. So I'm excited to get home, spend some time with the wife and the family. All right, almost at camp. Let's finish it off.
We ended up camping near this old abandoned hut and settled in for an early night. See you tomorrow.
Good morning on day 24 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. I've been getting a ton of comments from you guys talking about how miserable and how difficult this trail looks and how it's so different to a hike like the Pacific Crest Trail, which I walked earlier this year. So in today's video, I thought I'd talk a bit about why the Australian Alps walking track has been one of my favorite adventures ever, and also some of the key differences between the AWT and a trail like the PCT. So we are about 2 days or so from finishing the AWT, and while it's definitely been one of the hardest hikes I've ever done, it's also been one of the best. Personally, I just love challenging myself, and while you can definitely challenge yourself on any trail just by walking big miles, there's something just vastly different about the AWT. The trail itself is just hard. There's steep, overgrown trail everywhere. There's bugs and snakes, and you're really remote and in the middle of nowhere. And to me, that's just super enticing. And I've had such a good time pushing myself each and every day. Don't get me wrong, the Pacific Crest Trail is and probably always will be the best hiking experience of my life. That trail is pretty much perfect. There's no other way to really put it. And it had so many unique challenges of its own. But I'm really happy to have finished off such an epic 2024 with a trail like the AAWT. It's pushed me, it's challenged me, and to be honest, that's just super satisfying. Coming off the Pacific Crest Trail 3 or 4 months ago, I just knew there would never be a trail that would live up to how epic that experience was. So especially at the beginning of this hike on the AAWT, I was just trying to manage my expectations. I knew it just couldn't be better than the PCT, but it would be different, and hopefully that would be enough. Looking back on the last 24 days on this trail, I'm so grateful that it has been so different. I've gotten so much out of this hike. I've been hiking with Dan, Tom, and Maddie, 3 of the most experienced hikers and coolest people that I know, and we've had some incredible experiences on this trail. Some tough moments, some funny moments, and everything in between. And I've honestly learned so much from these guys throughout the trek. The trail itself has also taught me so much and really tested me, which has been really cool. I'm so excited for 2025 and all the adventures that I've got planned. I feel like I'm a better hiker, a stronger hiker after this year full of adventure. All right, that's probably enough rambling for one day. This trail has been epic and we've only got a couple days left, which I'm really looking forward to. Hope you guys are enjoying following along as well. See you tomorrow. This is day 25, our second last day through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. We've just entered Borbor National Park. Today we'll be traversing the Borbor Plateau, which is supposed to be pretty epic. And tomorrow morning, we walk our final kilometers into Walhalla, the southern terminus and the end of this incredible journey.
It was a pretty incredible start to our last full day on trail, walking through the giant mountain ash forests on the Borbor Plateau. The flora in this area is super beautiful and the trail's in great shape. We made the most of it this morning by taking a few side trips off the main route. It's always bittersweet coming towards the end of such an expansive and epic journey like the AAWT. But I'm so grateful I had the chance to have this experience before the end of 2024.
We have just crossed over the 30 kilometer mark for the day so far, and honestly this has been one of the most pristine sections of trail on the whole AAWT. The Borbor Plateau is quite popular with day hikers and multi-day hikers, and it's quite close to the city of Melbourne, so I think the trail gets maintained a bit better than some of the more remote sections of the Alps track. Pretty great way to finish off our journey on this trail.
The stunning trail continued into the late afternoon and we eventually made it to our last campsite on the Australian Alps walking track. I set my tent up for the last time and we enjoyed one last family dinner together as the sun was setting for the last time as well. I'll see you tomorrow for the end of this amazing adventure.
G'day on day 26 through hiking the Australian Alps walking track. This is our final morning on trail. We have approximately 15 kilometers left to hike into Walhalla, the southern terminus, and the end of this adventure. Let's get it done. Look at the little possum. So cute, and he's not even that scared of us. Okay, there's only about 10 kilometers left now. I gotta say, it's pretty bittersweet coming to the end of an adventure like this. You spend a month out here in the wild, it just becomes the new normal and it's hard to imagine going back to regular life. But I do deeply miss my wife. I miss my mama, my family, my friends. And as I'm recording this, it's only like 4 or 5 days till Christmas. So I'm definitely keen to get home and I'm ready to finish. I haven't filmed much of the trail today, but we've just been following this river along a trail and it's been absolutely stunning. Look at that. 5 kilometers left on the home stretch now. I've been thinking a lot about 2024 this morning and how much of a crazy year it's been. I spent 5 months in America through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail this year. And honestly, the AAWT has been the perfect way to cap off such an epic 12 months. Through hiking for a month in my home country, exploring places that I've never seen before, really testing myself and also just having a bloody good time. I'm honestly so excited for 2025 and everything that comes with that. I'm also very excited to get to Walhalla. Should only be about an hour away now. We haven't seen so much as a road or a building in 8 days. Feels good to be walking on solid ground again. We made it to the end of the Australian Alps walking track. Walhalla. A tad over 800 kilometers walked, 26 days. That was a wild adventure. We're done.